Welcome to part 2 of creating a Tic Tac Toe game, and we're going to look at creating a flowchart design. Now with this we're going to focus on kind of the front end. Now with any flowchart we obviously start with the rounded off rectangular boxes for the start and the end, and here I'm going to actually put boxes with the page included in this case because we're looking from the front end of the gameplay. In this case we've got a new player which we'll call the index PHP, and within that page there'll be an enter name and submit, so you can imagine it being a form like we saw with the screen layouts, and then that extends to the play game and the play PHP. Now once we're in the play PHP we might have a decision. Decisions are always highlighted by diamonds, and the actual no, if there is no player name given, takes us back to the previous page for the player name to be put in. After that, once we've got a valid name, then we need to actually construct our tic-tac-toe controller. So we're going from the visual pages or the visual side of our website, the actual play PHP and index PHP, and we're actually instantiating the controller object, the tic-tac-toe controller. And this will actually then do things like find out whether we have an existing game for that particular player. So here the next question is whether we do have a game ID, or if the game ID is -1, then it's going to be a new game for that game player. Even if it is -1, we'll still want to check to make sure they haven't got an existing game, and this is again to make the system a little bit more robust. And remember, we're reconstructing the game no matter what happens, so when the user comes to the website we can reconstruct the game. Now once you've actually got the control constructed, you might be given an actual position, a move position as well within the web page. So if we do have that and that's a yes, then we want to actually carry out this move, and we want to call the game move on the controller as well as the second step. So you remember that move is one of the verbs, one of the actions highlighted in our breakdown of the game. Now if there isn't, then basically we can go straight on to the next part, whether there is an active game for the player and whether there isn't, and so that's the next question. So so far we've got this flow of going into the play PHP, and you can see most of it's actually contained within that. Now if there is no game ID, we can go straight from that constructor of the tic-tac-toe to down to the decision of whether the player has an active game. Now once we've got an active game, if that's a yes, then we want to actually display that active game on the web page. Okay. And this means that they might pull up an old game that they haven't finished, and we want to actually display it to them. Now the thread that went down to that where they actually have a move, this is where a player is actually playing a game and entered the page, and they've actually got not only their name and the game ID but the position. Therefore we want to carry out that move, update the whole grid before we go on and ask that question about whether the player has an active game, which will be a yes then, and then therefore we'll display that active game and go down that yes branch. Now for the no, we'll go through and then we'll say, does the player recently have a completed game? And this is important because we might want to display their last game and actually be able to show them the results from that last game. Otherwise we'll get the situation where you end up on a new game page and you won't actually know whether you've won the previous game and have no actual feedback. So this is kind of things you can flesh out and actually step through, and you can step through these on paper and make sure the whole thing works. Now once we've actually got if the player has recently completed a game, then we want to actually display not only that completed game, but we also want to then display a new game that they can click on and trigger an actual new game move, as well as waiting games, which are games that other people have actually done the first move of but waiting for the second player to continue the move. So you can see the links here for yes and no for both of them, and the other one links back down to actually displaying the new game and empty game after displaying their last game that they've just completed. Now after this we want to actually, for the waiting games, we'll need a bit of a loop. So to actually do iteration in a flowchart, again we use a decision diamond for the decision, and that's the decision for the loop. And the only difference is the arrow ends up going back up above that decision, so essentially looping around back to that decision again. And this is basically going through for each waiting player. We're going to actually display the states of their game. And then after that we've got the actual end state down here, and this isn't the end state for the whole game, but the end state for the actual web experience. So we're not looking at a session or an object that lasts a whole session, but an object that lasts for a single visit. So reconstructs the game state, carries out a move, and then that's the end of its life. And so by doing it this way we can actually recreate games at any point, and then they can play it and complete them, and they can come back at any time and there won't be any problems. And so this is the main aim. And again, there might be issues if, say, one player disappears and doesn't come back, it doesn't allow the other player to complete, and they're things that would probably need a bit more work, where you could actually maybe cancel a game or terminate a game. So I've left that kind of outside of the scope of this. But essentially we can recreate a game, resume a game at any point. And the only catch is that maybe we'll need some sort of Ajax or some sort of JavaScript front-end magic to actually make the game refresh on the front end. And now the other thing to think about too with PHP, and this is an issue that we have with PHP, is that the sessions actually don't share objects across each independent PHP session, which would actually make this quite a lot easier for us to implement. If that was the case, we could actually have one Tic Tac Toe object. Now I'm just going through and highlighting these things, like green for the start, blue for the pages, and then I'm making yellow for the decisions, and it just makes it easier to read, and red for the ending branch. And so that's nice formatting thing that you can do as a final step. Now, the other thing to think about too with the way the game works is with things like JSP and ASP, you might actually be able to share objects between sessions, and this can lead to a different approach in your design. So there are a few things to think of, but hopefully with this flowchart it allows you to think through things, and again look at how you might be able to simplify your approach to your implementation. And in this case I found many ways of just focusing on the player coming in for a visit and focusing on that one particular step being carried out. In this case, whether they're signing up or they're making a move, and once they've made the move, what the results are, whether they're presented with the next version of the game grid, or whether they're presented with the actual ending game state, whether they've won or lost or drawn the game. And that's it.